happiness on Master Sun's face could not be hidden. He was really happy. Everyone rose, confirming the decision of the infirmary, and thus ended the long conversation. It was cool outside, but the sun coming out from behind the clouds brought a little warmth. After much listening and talking, the staff went outside to rest and relax a bit. As the rank went about its business to rest, someone shouted his name. The owner of the infirmary approached him joyfully to talk. The owner asked how he saw the future of the infirmary. This was a very difficult question. Chin said that he had been here for quite a long time and knew a lot, but he managed to experience something on himself. Therefore, he is very interested in how the infirmary looks in the eyes of a young doctor. Chin tried to find the right words to say everything correctly about the future of the infirmary. Song and Yuho waited for an answer from the rank. Chin still couldn't structure his thoughts and was analyzing what to answer. Finally, he decided on an answer that was like a stormy river. Master Song was very surprised, because the rank used an analogy with a river and not with an ocean or sea. Juho remained as indifferent and cold as possible during their conversation. But Chin decided to expand on his answer and give several reasons. Life can be compared to the flow of water, which begins its journey in the mountains and ends in the sea. Then the water evaporates and becomes rain, which again descends into the mountains. It would seem to be a bridge between the beginning and the end. Pirates are often found on rivers, but this does not mean that the infirmary is a pirate's nest, the official joked. Master Sun felt very happy and laughed, noticing that the infirmary resembled a place where pirates gather to disturb the river. Chin vehemently denied this claim and continued his conversation. Pirates are those people who seek happiness in conflicts with everyone who sails by. They demand money and jewelry, the official explained. Sun agreed because money and jewelry were also very important. The owner of the infirmary took the young doctor by the shoulders and came closer to ask a few questions. If you think that the infirmary is a watercourse, then you are now one of us, the leader among the pirates, said the owner. Chin did not speak completely freely, and during the ceremony he felt a tightness in his chest, breathing heavily. Tanju is different from the rank in this regard. He is responsible for the lives of all patients in the infirmary. You need to be tough and decisive. Discretion is more important than ever to avoid making yourself or your staff look bad. The owner noted that Chin would have to learn a lot in the infirmary. From this meeting, he firmly remembered that the rank is called not just a master but a benefactor, and he should try. Chin understood and accepted the advice of the owner of the infirmary and showed his agreement with a smile. The rank was interested in what a heavy load the owner of the infirmary, responsible for all departments of the institution, carried. It was getting dark, and candles were lit throughout the infirmary to prolong the short day. Chin had little time to sleep, train, and also write several books on surgery to improve the level of his unit. He had a lot of classes. His goal was to master new time management techniques. Writing the book took a long time, but he is glad that pencils were available indefinitely. Sharing knowledge with the teacher required a lot of time, and the daily routine turned out to be really difficult. Writing with pencils was faster than ink dice, and he was happy for that. Using bamboo letters helped him write his book faster. Chin was considering converting the infirmary to pencil work to improve productivity. Most of his medical knowledge could only be written down in a foreign language that no one knew. Translating medical terminology into a popular language was very difficult, because it had to be understandable to everyone. When everyone was asleep, the light was only in the room of the official, who continued to work for the benefit of the establishment. Chin continued to carry out his hard work in the hope of the support and hope of the owner of the infirmary. A few days later, they moved to the internal training area of the infirmary. This was Chin's first official non-training as a Tanj in front of the many other Tanjis who had invited him to attend. He was very happy, but understood that he would have to try very hard. And Juho continued to drag out a pass to him in order to prepare him. Chin was very worried that something might not work out for him, but he might be embarrassed. Yuho said that there is no need to communicate very much with other Tanjis because they can bring him under their control. But this was their trap, and the other Tanju wanted to show that the rank did not look exactly like a fighter and wanted to demonstrate that he still needed to study a lot. Continuing to equip the young doctor, Juho said that there is no need to worry about anything yet. It's better to relax. In the infirmary, everyone was worried about whether Chin had enough qualifications, but they wanted to check it out. Perhaps this is because even the doctors knew martial arts and could stand up for themselves. But having mastered the situation and realized that this was not so much, the rank realized that he liked it here. Smiling, Juho said that the young doctor began to speak in the words of his teacher. He can't even believe that he liked the beginning of such a difficult experiment. Juho also said that this was the only place that the owner of the infirmary really liked in terms of atmosphere. He cheerfully stretched out his smile and said that he understood everything. They had already stood here for quite a long time, and the question was brewing as to how much longer they needed to be here. This is a training suit, and in any case, it can get wrinkled or dirty. Juho said it correctly, but discipline came first for him, and he liked to be responsible for what he did. Finally, from a distance, the silhouette of a teacher began to appear with one of the combat training masters. Their training was about to begin. Pleasant sunlight flooded the training ground. Our main character was sitting on a reed stick. Yuko stood opposite him. They looked at each other in anticipation of training sparring, while two men, one of whom was a doctor, watched them. There was tension in the air as the competitors watched each other. Phew. Our hero sighed while balancing on a stick. Breathing is very important in battle. That hour, the doctor's assistant was already tense. It seemed as if space itself was condensing around him. He raised his hand and swung. He had about 7 small pebbles in his palm. But despite their size, they flew towards our hero at the speed of a bullet. Due to the high speed, the pebbles turned into glowing red stripes of light. Shinji, in turn, deftly tried to dodge them. Thanks to deft movements and concentration, the stones flew past one after another. The hardest part was dodging with the lower body. Everything worked out for the chin. In turn, the redhead did not stop for a second and continued to shower our hero with a hail of stone bullets. And now another batch was on the way to our hero. "Ugh, damn you, idiot!" he mentally screamed while dodging stone bullets flying from all sides. "He's never thrown like that before," our hero thought to himself while dodging. "Have you decided to beat me up?" thought he, watches the expression on his opponent's face. And now the fight is finally over. Both participants turned to the watching father and in turn clapped loudly, expressing their sincere impression of the battle. "Great job, said the doctor, breaking into a smile and clapping. "I completely agree with the dream," added a man standing next to him with one eye. "Foo-foo, I got a little nervous," our hero answered, out of breath after an intense fight, with a smile. "And almost got screwed because of that idiot," he added mentally to himself. With the Samje step technique, he avoided attacks without a single hesitation, absolutely naturally, like water. Is it possible to achieve such mastery in a few months? The man asked himself in surprise. If I hadn't seen everything with my own eyes, I definitely wouldn't have believed it. His physique is not exactly suitable for martial arts, he told those present. Yes, in this regard he is not remarkable, but what he has is enough for training. The doctor confirmed his word, but also added a little hope to them. Then how did he manage to move like that? Asked the man. In martial arts, the most important part is internal energy. That is why noble families are not particularly interested in physique. The doctor noticed, suddenly becoming more serious. Are you saying my approach is wrong? Asked the man, clearly unhappy with such a statement. Not at all. A strong body helps internal energy accumulate better, and it is also a good bonus for a future family. It has only advantages, the doctor explained his position. However, strength does not lie in physique alone. This child, like no other, diligently trained her muscles, he explained, looking at the young man who listened carefully to everything that was said, specifically concentrating on developing muscle strength in the legs. He said, touching the child's head. It looks like you have already mastered the Samje step technique to some extent, the doctor said, laying our hero down. I'm very glad that you think so, teacher, Dr. Chin answered joyfully. Yes. Now it's the turn to move on to studying the blurred step technique. It's not even close to the previous one in terms of complexity. Can you handle it? Asked the doctor in all seriousness. What is the blurred step technique? Our hero asked. I already know the answer to the question from the book, but at such moments it's important to pretend that I don't know anything, he thought. This is the next step after Samya, the doctor said smugly. The Samje paths, of which there were only 3 at the beginning, reach the blurred step phase and diversify even more, the doctor explained. Once you master the blurry Sha, much greater progress awaits you, the doctor added. What comes after it? Inquired the rank. When you reach stage 12, you can begin the technique of the blurred step of heavenly energy, and this can already be called the absolute teaching of divine power, the doctor explained. In the whole world, there are not even 5 step techniques that could approach the blurred step of heavenly energy in their sensation. He continued his explanation while his subordinate listened attentively. That's right! The celestial energy blur step among all the step techniques is the highest link. However, the problem is that the blur step technique, which serves as a bridge to moving to the next level, is terribly difficult. The rank mused. Teacher, can I practice Samje a little more? Our hero asked enthusiastically. It's amazing. Usually, students from military families are eager to move on to the next stage as quickly as possible. The one-eyed man thought to himself, and indeed, few people are ready to go through and improve the material they have already covered many times. Do you think she's still difficult for you? Asked the doctor, surprised by what he heard. Yes, the more I know it, the more difficult it seems, answered our hero. I thought that before moving on to studying the blurry step, it would be better to hone the Samje, he said with a smile. If I can't master it from cover to cover, then the blurry step will not work for me, he thought to himself. That's right. As they say, if you drive more quietly, you will continue. When you're ready, then we'll start teaching. Now let's go and take a break? Asked the doctor, leading our young man by the arm. It was snowing outside. The beautiful view of us snow-capped mountains took our breath away. Several paths and tracks were slowly disappearing due to the new snow. Our hero made circles in the cold one after another. After the first stage, reaching the second did not take much time. He thought to himself as he continued to run and strengthen his body. But the third one took much more than the first and second ones combined. He thought to himself, running faster and faster. He braked sharply, leaving behind a small trench and snow. This has always been the case in martial arts novels, he reasoned. Something small hides behind itself the depths of knowledge, like an iceberg, he thought while practicing punches in the air. Even the demon archer, thanks to Shunyata, managed to achieve knowledge, and with it the Hagyan stage. It doesn't matter where you get the knowledge from. He thought he continuously continues to train. Phew. He covered short distances with sharp movements. Small, insignificant ones are still useful. This is the kind of little things that this world is filled with. He continued to think, running in circles at great speed. From such a speed, gusts of wind were formed around, reminiscent of a hurricane. In the compartment they are knowledge, he thought as he cut through the air with his body. The word Samje itself does not just mean 3 directions. The truth is always on the surface. It is depicted in the form of the Dharma Chakra. Move in different directions. The steps form a circle. He spoke while his movements drew bizarre symbols in the air. He closed his eyes and saw an incredibly beautiful drawing that looked like a mandala. It consisted of black and glowing yellow lines. They formed an incredibly beautiful pattern, something that always remains in the memory. The mandala is like a geometric structure symbolizing the world order. He opened his eyes, and I saw 5 spheres of different colors. One was red, the second was blue, the third was green, and the fourth was yellow. The 5th was brown. Well, he was shaking with energy, and he thought, oh, here it is. Quotes are the end of self-forgetfulness, he thought as he continued to draw incredible movement in the snow, after which he took a full lungful of air, because breathing is incredibly important. The energy of gold protects the body. The energy of earth maintains health, he thought, while his body was covered with a brownish sphere, and the energy of the tree absorbs the energy of the environment. He imagined in front of him a dark green sphere with black stripes reminiscent of branches. By removing all the impurities out with the help of water energy, a beautiful blue sphere surfaced in his consciousness. They are being burned by the energy of fire, he thought, while a red sphere like red-hot metal appeared in his head. Our hero lay in the snow with his arms and legs melted wide. Breathing heavily after a good workout, he smiled. After all, there's nothing better than reaching your peak through physical activity, and also in spiritual ones. Do you have any idea how funny this is? Ah ha ha, Tapsol Muhon laughed at him Yuho. Tapsol Makin literally walk in the snow without leaving traces. A word consonant with the name of the stage of martial arts related to high-level warriors. Yuho, good, our hero said irritably. It turns out that by Tapsol Makin you only meant the Samje technique. I still remember the fear in the eyes of the doctors, and I couldn't understand why your story about Tapsolmakin caused so much noise. The red-haired subordinate continued to mock. Ha 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 was heard from everywhere. I see you're having fun, reasoned our hero, seething with anger. They headed back to the estate together, but from that day on, Jinshin He began to be called Mr. Snowmobile. The scarlet sunset sun was shining in that place, and a light fog covered the surrounding area. Is the form correct? Asked someone's voice. Yes, I drew it well. It's a little nerdy here. The heated discussion of sketches of clothes on paper continued. So, the redhead inquired about our hero. Recently I've been busy writing my medical works. Of course, the teacher helped me in many ways, our hero reasoned. Yeah, that's it, he answered, checking the papers with what Yuho was doing. The doctor's subordinate himself was completely involved in the work. But you need to make the conclusion yourself, our hero thought to himself while looking at the drawing of a human heart on paper. Wow! Our hero exclaimed in surprise, looking at the drawings. Yuho is drawn with a brush, but his line is much thinner and clearer than mine, made with a pencil. How is that? He asked himself mentally. If there is something that is beyond your control, asked the rank, watching his comrade wield a brush. I can't save the master. Juho sadly answered the joke question. Such words make my soul restless, thought our hero, looking down at his eyes. Your dedication to your teacher is amazing. What are your reasons? Yuko asked the rank, but he just fell silent and tore his brush away from the paper. Well, it doesn't concern you, sir, he answered briefly, putting the brush to the rest of the painting equipment. By the way, benefactor, you have great talent for martial arts. Being at the 4th stage of Chimbop of the 5 elements, you already have knowledge of freezing and the 5th, he said, smiling a sly smile. He's trying to change the subject again. He always does this. The official thought irritably, again without receiving answers to his question. Why is it that every time I try to squeeze something out, it's like he's surrounded by an impenetrable wall? He reasoned, standing nearby and watching his partner work. This behavior only irritates my interest more, he thought to himself. Why are you suddenly talking about me? I wanted to know your story with the teacher, said our hero. But Yuho just looked at him and exhaled through his nose. Juho is not a villain like, for example, the archer who terrorized the heavenly demon in the story, but a minor character, which is why no special information was given about him. Our hero reasoned to himself. Your interest in me is excessive, sir, Yuho answered in order to avoid further questions. My threats of violence against you were not enough to satisfy your curiosity, although there are people who like to be tortured. He continued speaking. What? This blockhead takes me for a loser? Our hero thought to himself. Ha ha ha, nonsense, he said. Your attempts to reveal anything about me have nothing to do with this, but I can't work anymore, he said. A task of this size was usually carried out by about 9 people, you know? He explained the reason that he could no longer work. But, thought our hero, he's too calm for someone who is supposedly tired, he thought, looking at his enthusiastic partner bursting with health. Yuho is one big mystery. Where does he get the energy to do so many things? He is the first nurse of Marima, he thought. I remember how his partner made entrances at night. Graduate student, laboratory assistant, and head of the infirmary office. He continued to list Juho's regalia in his head. And also an illustrator of medical books and an engineer who creates medical devices. In addition to Yuhu's main duties as an official, he is also our assistant with the teacher, he continued to think. And the further he thought, the more crazy it seemed. But I don't think you'll get off easy, idiot, Chin thought to himself, frowning his eyes. What you did at the rehearsal, before the Tanju of physical strength, is still fresh in my memory. Flashbacks of a recent short sparring are in his head. Can his partner? It was truly amazing that he achieved such speed and throwing power with an ordinary hand. I want to get to know you not in order to give you extra work, but out of curiosity. After all, my teacher has known you for a long time, he said. So this is the interest of the apprentice who follows his master, Yuho clarified. Or is it the curiosity of a doctor who wants to provide even more help in treating patients? He wondered. It's neither one nor the other. I'm interested in getting to know you, because we will coexist in the same hospital for a very long time. The rank answered, almost shouting. Well, okay. If you don't make a mistake in the treatment, and I don't kill you for it, then of course you will live here for a long time, the red-haired man answered calmly. Zelina's vodka plays a secondary role, but dares to threaten me, our hero thought. Are you really going to kill me? Asked the official, full of seriousness. Do you hope to stay alive after punishing me with such a mountain of work? Asked the subordinate. I'm not sure you'll agree to admit it, but I am a bodhisattva, he said. Bodhisattva, a person who has decided to become a follower of the Buddha for the benefit of all beings, seeking to save all living beings from suffering. It seems that me allowing you to live in peace has made you think my threats are empty chic. Maybe it's time to let out some anger, he said. TC, I just entrusted him with 9 different things. Did he decide to get angry? Our hero thought to himself. He doesn't threaten me with reprisals either. It wouldn't have come to that. Our hero rasped through his teeth. But the sly fox only smiled softly in response. No, you would have done it anyway, because you don't care about the workload of others. He spoke in a completely calm tone, but clearly with mockery. "What? You want to say that you wouldn't do anything to save a patient?" our hero shouted, jumping out of his chair. "I would go," the subordinate answered briefly and clearly. For a second, there was complete silence in the room. "I tolerate you precisely because you are the same," he said. "If I exploit him even more harshly, he might do something wrong," our hero thought with gritted teeth. "You were interested in my relationship with the owner," returned to the original topic, Juho, and then China pulled back. And indeed, the conversation began with this question. "Oh, you wanted to tell me?" he said. "Heh, not at all. I just dream of getting rid of your annoying questions as soon as possible," they answered him. "So what?" our hero asked impatiently. But Yuhu only became serious and frowned. The owner pacified the anger of the Mimul. Yuho began his story. Mimul is a non-entity, a person with many vices. "Mimul?" our hero asked in surprise. For him, what he heard was a complete surprise. "People perceive Mimuls as pitiful creatures, but they are not deprived of the opportunity to experience hatred," explained Yuho. "It was the owner who weakened her." He continued to explain, remembering the beautiful landscape of those times. "Doesn't Mimul use the word in relation to animals and plants?" the shocked hero asked. "Why do you call yourself that?" continued to be interested in the rank. But Juho didn't answer, he just smiled. He stood up and asked, "Interesting?" "Of course." The rank immediately answered without hesitation. "Excellent. It would be just perfect if you contracted the disease due to accumulated anger and subsequently the eternal suppression of curiosity." Yuho answered smugly. "Oh, you," our hero thought to himself and clenched his teeth in anger. What he heard was already shocking, but it was impossible to leave everything like that without an answer. "You can ask as much as you want, I won't say a word more. Unless before I kill you so that I take my secret with me to the grave," he said, sorting through the papers. This was truly a diabolical plan. "If you're that interested, make a mistake in reading," he said while continuing to draw. "Well, how is that?" our hero shouted. "He longs for answers. Damn fox, he's dodging questions," he thought. I'm really bursting with anger. Let's stop this. It's scary to imagine what else you're capable of giving out," our hero said irritably as he sorted through the papers. Turns out I won," the fox said smugly. "Better get to work," our hero shouted back. "You can't defeat him with words. That means I'll make you plow and grind your teeth." Well, he is our hero in his own mind. "No, you can't do that. Don't be stubborn. Just don't," he answered himself. "Are you saying I made a mistake somewhere? The writing and teaching are progressing well. The knowledge that the infirmary workers gain opens up a new world for them. If things continue like this, in about a few years, Jin Cheon-hee will be able to transfer all his knowledge to paper and will pass it on to others. And perhaps P. Rin will dominate the medical community and become the best infirmary in the entire world." And now several months have passed. "Apchee!" was heard somewhere from afar. "Wow, it's kind of cold," someone said. Meanwhile, the snow covered the roofs of buildings with a blanket and covered the trees in their icy coats. Our hero walked outside along a road cleared of snow. He looked up and opened his mouth and eyes wide. He reached there with his hand. Wow. Now everything here is like in an operating room at the beginning of the mid-20th century, he said, looking around everything. "Finally, I will truly begin my surgical career," he said, full of determination and joy from the fact that he received a new operating point. Winter is getting harsher. Snow covers the mountains and snowflakes slowly fell to the ground. "Today, for the first time after Wang Kagyong's treatment, I will perform a surgical operation," our hero thought as he fell in pieces from the treetops. Surgical department. This time the patient came to us according to the standard scenario, having first undergone an examination and not like a demon archer, suddenly bursting in like a bolt from the blue and begging for the salvation of his daughter. He thought while a wonderful winter landscape stood outside. He stood in his department. He was wearing a blue robe, a hair cap, and a mask like everyone else present. This was necessary for sterility. We also wore gloves and shoe covers. An assistant helped him button his clothes at the back. The patient was lying on the bed, also completely covered in robes, except for the place where they would operate. Our hero pulled on his gloves more comfortably and took a deep breath. After all, this is his first operation in such a place. "So, everything is ready," he thought, putting on his gloves. It was very exciting since this was his first operation here. The man lay motionless on the bed. He was dressed in a blue robe and a hair cap. There was a special sheet on the body with a slit in the place where the operation would be performed. Darkening and bulging were visible on the exposed area of skin. Disease acute appendicitis. So this is what it is, an operating room. Impressive, said one of the three men who entered inside. Finally, we will be able to broaden our horizons by seeing the so-called surgery, added the person standing nearby. Our hero stared sharply at the people who had unexpectedly disturbed them. Oops, it's getting a little crowded in here, thought our hero immediately looking at the new arrivals. Two men and one woman stood and watched intently, looking for any way to get to the bottom of things. Let's start the operation. Is it verified? Asked our hero. Yes, they answered him loudly. Our hero sighed heavily. The doctor assumed a serious look. His blue eyes went well with his blue suit. His subordinate was also here and remained completely concentrated. Teacher Yuho, I rely on you, our hero confidently declared, having mustered up his resolve. He touched the patient's body with his hand, and a blue glow began to circulate through his hand directly into the patient's body. By moving my energy, you can feel what's inside the patient, the Chin thought, while the blue energy illuminated the space around. Thanks to this, he could seemingly see with his own eyes the damaged organ inside the man. After the teacher showed me the principle of the technique, I practiced it tirelessly. But every time the feeling is different, he thought. But suddenly something unexpected happened. Oh, damn, thought our hero while the clouds of energy wandered around the smaller organs. How neglected everything is. Usually, in this state, it is extremely difficult to live without antibiotics, thought our hero as he examined the badly damaged internal organs. Surgery on the appendix of a blind cat, also known as the appendix, is carried out in case of blockage, which has led to the expansion of the cavity. As a result, all the contents of the stomach, the digestive organs, come out, polluting and infecting the abdominal cavity. According to the examination notes, the patient began experiencing abdominal pain 5 days ago. He remembered what he had been told before. It's hard to say exactly when the perforation occurred, he thought as he brought the scalpel to the patient. Despite everything, his life force is stable, thanks to the energy for that. He continued to think, starting to carefully cut the skin with a scalpel. Having made a neat cut, blood gushed out from the wound along with some impurities. The terrible smell of ellipsis, said someone from the crowd. The contents of the stomach came out through the hole in the appendix, answered our hero without taking his eyes off the scene of the operation. Stop the bleeding! Aspiration! He ordered his assistants to deploy for this operation. His teacher immediately came to his senses and directed his hand with animal precision in his eyes. With light movements, he delivered several precise blows or touches around the wound. His assistant immediately joined in and began using some kind of spell. With the help of his energy, similar to the scarlet flame, he began to pull out the blood and impurities from the wound of the patient. In our hero's world, this would be done by sucking. Everyone who came to watch, except the oldest, widened their eyes in amazement. Everyone was shocked by the coordinated work. Did great, thought our hero. Now, let's remove the organs, he ordered. Several honey brothers carefully held iron devices with which they stretched the incision on the skin. They were pulled out by sewage, and our hero worked with the hole itself. He grabbed the organ and began dragging it out. We need to continuously rinse the abdominal cavity until we get rid of the infection, he thought as he pulled out the affected organ. Next to him was a small reservoir of water which he constantly used for these purposes. Ha amazes me every time the groundwork is taken. The movement of the hands is fast and precise. Concentration on the limit of ellipsis, thought his teacher watching the polished and clear work of his student. Nochi did not notice this because his eyes were completely concentrated on the affected area. Not a single mistake can be allowed, especially when he is being watched. Although even without this, it is still a person's life and not some kind of toys. He was already stitching up the incision he had made earlier. I cut the last thread on the seam. The seam is perfect. Not a single blood artery is touched. I said to myself that I was happy that I had finished the job, and now the last thread was finally cut. Everyone watched the operation in awe. The nurse was holding a towel, the subordinate was sitting by a basin of water. The teacher maintained the patient's condition on his own, and our hero finished the stitch. The trio stood and simply watched from afar. Ho ho! A grandiose spectacle. In reality, the operation is much more amazing than from the words of others. Trinity discussed that they had recently seen how our hero works. They walked through the courtyard, bathed in the evening sun. It's simply incredible. I think Hyosen no Gue himself would not be able to carry out something like that, said the dense woman, folding her hands in front of her. I ripped open the stomach, washed out the insides, and sewed everything back up. Sooner or later, after such an intervention, the patient will die, won't he? Asked the old man with a long mustache and eyebrows. He was sweating a little and didn't know if his guess was correct. If he were a warrior, Chol Chon, he would be able to with the help of internal energy, but, alas, restoration is impossible, answered one of the boys. Yes, even the warrior Cheol Chong dies. The Kolran is too serious, they answered him. That's right. Usually the patient gets a fever and dies. The old man supported his speech. Besides, how can he empty himself now if there is a hole in his stomach? Death is a matter of time. The old man continued his complaints. What do you think, Tanju Acupuncture? The young girl asked. The wound was stitched up perfectly. The loss of blood was minimal. Perhaps the outcome that you predicted could be avoided. All that remains is to observe. They answered her. Medicine for damage to internal organs will not help him retain all the heat. I doubt whether he will cope with the drop in temperature. The conversation continued further and further. Well, the young man has done his part of the job. I'll take care of the rest. By the time we were talking on the street, it was already deep night. Our hero plopped down on the bed and took a deep breath. It was really a difficult test for him because he had not operated for so long. I still lack so many things, he muttered, a little sad. Naturally, the operating room that he has now is not enough. It cannot be compared with the one he had in his world. The lack of antibiotics and a surgical aspirator, which removes everything unnecessary, providing access to the organs, is especially noticeable. Those who can use the Yoho technique, matter filling the void, are few, and there is not enough for everyone, he thought. Remember how his partner pulled out impurities with the help of his strength? Leaving the patient without an antibiotic after surgery is also not an option, he thought, remembering today's patient. How depressing it is not to be able to demonstrate even a quarter of your skills. He was indignant, looking at his hands. This would put anyone in an awkward position. After all, he is a professional surgeon, but his skills are very dependent on modern technology. He sighed heavily. Problems are a dime a dozen, but what worries me most, he thought, looking at the ceiling with tired eyes. The state of the teacher. Thought he remembers the painful appearance of his mentor. If you don't prepare in advance, then his life could be in danger. It's scary to imagine what would happen during a rash operation, he thought, imagining how, through his own mistake, he could ruin the life of such a precious teacher for him. Are you resting? Asked someone who suddenly entered the room. Our hero immediately raised his head and looked around. The one who disturbed his rest was the teacher he remembered. Teacher! No, I'm thinking. It seems this operation has helped me make a little progress, our hero said to his mentor, who slowly approached him with a light gait. Don't overwork yourself. The four Tanju made such a noise just like small children, and you have an expression on your face as if your whole life passed before your eyes, the teacher said, coming closer and extending his hand. He stroked our hero as he had done many times before. How could it be otherwise because your life hangs by a thread, thought our hero, remembering the motivation for which he decided to engage in surgery in this world. But the teacher just looked at him with a smile on his face. His look was like the look of a loving father who was so pleased with his son who had finally achieved success in his business. It's so nice when his big cold hands stroke my head. I thought I continued to accept stroking from my teacher. He opened his eyes and smiled, looking at his mentor. I'm willing to do anything, just to instill warmth in them, but it's going to take a lot to achieve that, he thought while continuing to accept the stroking with a smile. Master, I am planning to create something, he started when they had already sat down next to each other. But I don't want to disturb you, he added. I need to cure you before your condition gets worse, he declared his intentions with complete confidence. Right, the doctor answered without too much enthusiasm. It seems he has long since come to terms with his fate, but of course he won't tell the young man this. Okay, so what do you want? The teacher asked. Please, lend me Yucca for a long period, the rank asked without hesitation. I clearly know what he needs. Again, asked the teacher, I must create penicillin. Our hero stated with confidence, knowing exactly what he needed to save the life of his precious teacher. Why did a chill run down my spine? The caretaker asked himself, shuddering. He does not yet know what awaits him ahead, how much effort he will have to put into saving the life of his teacher along with our main character. Penicillin? Asked the teacher, while the aromatic tea was slowly cooling down on the table. What is he? he asked, not knowing what this word means. Which is not surprising because no one in the world has yet invented antibiotics. Ah, it's an antibiotic, answered our hero, forgetting that the sky teacher is unfamiliar with this word. A substance produced by microbes that has a bactericidal property that inhibits the growth of other microorganisms. He briefly explained how it all works from a biological point of view. Penicillin fights bacterial infection that has entered the body, he continued to explain while sipping warm tea. Wow, really useful thing. The teacher, who was also holding his cup, responded in astonishment. Yes, that's why I need a growing room, our hero explained. Yoo-ho! You became Murim's first nurse, and now you'll be the first slave, he thought to himself. A couple of operations gave me a clearer idea of what, our hero said, remembering what operations he managed to carry out in this world. Energy is tremendous power. However, she has her limits, which cannot but worry me. He continued to talk, holding burning tea in his hands and very worried because of his previous experience. Okay, I will ensure that your request is fulfilled. Is anything else required? The teacher asked. I know that his student asks for different things, not out of his own whims, but out of need. There are no exclamation marks. Thank you very much for lending me Yuha. He is an outstanding person, our hero answered with a smile, pleased that his request was approved. On the one hand, I'm happy, but on the other, I'm a little envious, because you're passing on a lot of technological knowledge to him, said the doctor, a little annoyed that he could not take an active part in all this. If I weren't sick, I could be with you, he reasoned while his eyes filled with sadness. Don't say that, teacher. Now the most important thing for you is peace. Zayavilchin jumped to his feet. He did not want to upset his teacher in any way. You yourself saw an operation on the Secum, and as you can understand, this method of treatment is extremely dangerous. If during the operation you have a sudden attack, I will find myself in a difficult situation, he explained, standing in front of his teacher and waving his arms from the side to the side. But for sure, it turns out that the opportunity to perform an operation is limited in time, the teacher realized sharply. This problem is like a time bomb, and the teacher's daily lifestyle does not help, thought our hero, plunging more and more into thought. The bomb could explode at any moment in a year or maybe tomorrow, he thought. Teacher, I ask you to take care of your health, asked our hero, bowing his head and folding his hands in a certain gesture. Okay, the teacher answered briefly, breaking into a smile. I promise you, my little doctor, he added, and the official involuntarily broke into a smile. Extra work, impudently declared his rank to a subordinate who turned up to him. That's how Yoho was put in charge of creating the face-growing room, and we really started working on making penicillin. Yoo-hoo grabbed his head and ground his teeth in anger. It seemed like veins were even popping out on his face. Penicillin belongs to the class of lactam antibiotics, which are extracted from green mold. Mold is sensitive to temperature, light, and humidity. Sometimes it happens that even if all the conditions are met, it is not possible to dilute it. After all, biology and mathematics are different things, reasoned our hero, doing the hard work of creating an antibiotic. It doesn't matter how much time I spend on growing vessels. If I don't have enough knowledge, nothing will come of it. It's just the mindset of a farmer growing mushrooms at home, he thought, while everyone around him was fussing and working. The men stood by a strange device and debugged something. Others were forced and engaged in physical labor, then stood with the plan and led the process, directing everyone to optimize the work. At this rate, something similar to a foundation has already begun to be built around. Everyone worked hard for a good purpose. The vessels, as you asked, are ready. Did it turn out right? Asked Yukod, looking at the huge vessel resembling a bottle. Ceramic tank. Looks good, answered the official, looking at the new building. Healers will need to take charge of the lower fermenter, yes? Someone asked, looking at the many tanks. Uh-huh. With the help of the wind energy of the 5 elements, it is necessary to make the air circulate under the floor, he explained, looking at the tanks and imagining what it would all look like. Magic can really make the production process a lot easier. Ha! Usually a motor would do this. But now the first cultivation slave in the history of Murima will get down to business, our hero thought with an evil smile, imagining how his subordinate would work hard. Chimbop, I haven't studied the 5 verses, but I can control wind energy. The owner said to try, since I've already decided to help you, Yuho said, leaving his hands on his belt. He has a lot of work ahead of him. Working with green mold is a delicate task, but since you take it on, I can be calm, answered our hero. What will happen after the fermentation stage is completed? Asked the subordinate. Healers who possess the energy of ice must sharply cool the fermented water and begin refining. The rank answered him. I think a value from 3 to 5 will be enough. Now the acidity of the liquid is approximately 2 dem, he thought, as he watched the healer use his magic on one of the tanks. However, it is unknown exactly how to define it in the future, he thought, watching the blue mold floating in the glass. I want to come up with a way that will allow me to accurately determine the amount of internal energy and a method for creating refined water, stated our hero standing near many tanks. Not an easy task. His subordinate standing next to him answered. I agree, added our hero. After removing the impurities, it is necessary to give the medicine the form of pills and store it in the coolest place of the infirmary, explained our hero, imagining how small pills lie in a jar somewhere deep in the basement. The plan was outlined, but there is always a chance that something will go wrong if you forget about the storage problem, he thought while looking into the distance. The main difficulty will be the unpredictability of the effect of penicillin on the people here. He continued his thought, watching how many people were working on his idea. The manufacturing process of the antibiotic went smoothly. Mistakes, of course, were made, but the first fruits of the labor appeared before the end of the season. This could not but please me. And now a whole month has passed. Our hero walked around the growing room and observed the fruits of his labor and the labor of his comrades. The glass was filled with clumps of blue mold. The process is underway, and I was already ready that it would take twice as long, our hero said, looking at the glass with admiration. The lack of time was incredibly pressing, but the quick results gave me strength, he thought to himself contentedly, looking at the fruit of his labors. The chings of the 5 elements are nothing, he thought as he examined the glass. Training, research, development, he listed in his head. I remember how I meditated once upon a time. The whole last month I was completely absorbed in work. My brain wasn't even tired. He recalled how he made a lot of notes and other things that were needed to carry out the operation and grow penicillin. On the contrary, my head works like a clock and my sleep has become deeper, he thought, stretching his shoulders and arms. I can't even believe that I have made such progress in Shimbop internal energy, despite such a busy schedule, I thought while holding a glass of water in my hands. It's good to be young. You recover quickly. Your head works like a charm, and you can see everything without glasses. He was happy about his new body while looking at mold through the glass. They say that if you become a master of internal energy, the aging process slows down. So, entrust your fate to heaven, you can turn old age into a second youth. The teacher is a good example of this. I don't know exactly how old he is, but I think he's not far behind in age head of the transport organization Cloud Dragon. Our hero thought, I remember how young his teacher looks, although in fact he is already quite many years old. What a miracle! A middle-aged man, but he looks 20! Our hero continued to be amazed at such amazing things until someone approached from behind. It was his subordinate Yuho. Are you satisfied with the result? Judging by your smile, your mood has improved, he shouted, clearly trying to scare Chin on purpose. Oh, you're already here, answered our hero. This is the same pie. What's his name? He asked, looking at the mold in the glass. What kind of medicine is this that requires so much work to make? Sounds like Western alchemy. The subordinate asked our hero. Is there alchemy in the Western region? The official asked in surprise after hearing something extraordinary. Of course, but practically no one here knows it. It's a little like ancient Chinese chemistry. He explained as if everyone knew it from the cradle. In the West, alchemy is considered part of the knowledge of demonic arts or magic, he added. The novel mentioned an area in which foreigners live. However, detailed information about it was not given. Our hero recalled what he knew about this world from the book. So you didn't know about alchemy? How did you get the idea to make so many things? Yuho continued to ask questions. But I'm curious. How did you, Yuho, easily manage to make everything I asked for in a day? The rank inquired with an evil smile. You don't change? The subordinate answered, also looking down on him. Well, okay. I won't doubt your skills anymore. What do you need now? It would be ideal. Tell me in detail about the medicine. Yuho changed the tone of the conversation sharply. Said Chin, looking at the glass in his hand. Based on the criteria of the current era, ellipses can be called a limited panacea, he stated with a smug smile. Panacea? Is this possible? The subordinate asked in surprise, even sweating a little. You may be skeptical about my words, But after you see the effect, you will change your mind. Our hero answered smugly, spreading her arms to the side. Yuko looked at him with disbelief. Anyone would be surprised to hear that someone is inventing a panacea. "Were you wondering why so much work? We will gradually conduct experiments," the official stated confidently, turning in the other direction. "No worse, I just watched irritably. I understand that he has to work even more." Meanwhile, it was a dark, dark night outside. Only rare stars broke through the darkness, and the moon barely illuminated the building. The windows were closed. Already a hero, by the light of candles, sat and sorted something on the table. These were countless entries that he reread one after another. This, too, was part of his undoubtedly important work. Syphilis, he thought. There are several causes of this disease, but the main one is an infection transmitted through sexual contact, he reasoned while reading the entry. Syphilis initially appeared on the islands of the West Indies. During the time of the great geographical discoveries, Columbus became infected with it, and the disease spread throughout Europe. He recalled about how this disease appeared in his home world, and then all over the world. It was this theory that was taught to us when I was studying, but recently other arguments began to appear, proving that syphilis existed in Europe 100 years before Columbus. He continued his thoughts. "I'm not interested in what is true. The method of treatment is what's important," he thought as he wrote something down on paper. "And regarding the current world," he thought, looking at his own note. "Here, patients prefer to take a potent poison containing mercury as a medicine. They did not achieve the desired effect, except that they died one after another in the throes of mercury poisoning. Here you have an incurable disease," he reasoned while studying local methods of treating syphilis. It was day outside, and many women were passing through the corridor. Also, many people walked across the bridge. "Those people came from the How clan?" asked our hero, watching what was happening. How clan, which brings together people from the lowest strata of the population. "Yes, have you heard anything about him?" asked Yuho. "Oh no," answered the rank. "Only in general terms," he added to himself. "How belongs to the Sabka and runs brothels with loop establishments in Murim," he decided to explain. "The clan is quite large," he continued, remembering the map and the location of the points of influence of this clan on it. "Because where people live, a bar simply must be built. Their base is always located in a crowded place." He continued his explanations. "As they say, even an insensitive block of wood opens its mouth after a glass of alcohol," he said, looking at the crowd of people passing by. "How makes money by selling information and, by sending his spies, expands his own sphere of influence," he added, looking at the three brightly made-up women. "Exactly. I remembered." Our hero thought to himself, noticeably sadder. Most of them are vagabonds with nowhere to go." He recalled a story from books and poor hungry women who were tied up somewhere. The Saba had no kindness, no dishonesty, so the clan's residents risked dying at any second. This distinguished their life from the life of ordinary people. He continued to reflect, he recalls the book. "I hope that cases of illness among high-quality official concubines who came to us can be easily resolved," he thought, lowering his head in sadness. "The patients with syphilis you were looking for have arrived. Shall we meet with their representatives?" asked the subordinate. "We ask for love and favor, sir," someone said, approaching our hero who was sitting at the table with his books on it. Yuho stood next to him as a secretary. "The disease has gotten very worse," our hero thought to himself, staring ahead in shock. "Oh, yes, please sit down," he said, and the two women folded their hands in a certain manner and bowed. Their skin had deteriorated, so they disguised it with a thick layer of cosmetics. Our hero thought to himself while looking at the patient. "Thank you for coming," he added as his patient sat down. "We are immensely grateful that you paid attention to people like us," said the woman who was sitting on the left. "I plan for you to receive treatment at the medicine clinic located under the mountain." "What is the reason for your personal visit?" our hero asked. "If there is something more terrible than human eyes," asked the woman, staring seriously at our hero. "Knowing in your head that a thing is dirty and seeing it with your own eyes are not the same thing," one of the women said, causing the atmosphere in the room to immediately change to a sadder one. "The fact that they are from the How clan does not mean that they can belittle you like that," our hero thought to himself. "Mister, you are a strange person. You have opened yourself up or treated such disgusting creatures," she continued to say. "Why so rude?" our hero asked himself, not understanding why the woman belittles herself so much. "Of course, their position predisposes them to such treatment, but I still think it's wrong." He reasoned, looking at his new patients. "You don't have to believe in the success of my treatment. I'll just do everything in my power." The official waved it off, smiling. The hitherto silent woman in the blue suit, a task, looked at him. It's hard to believe. Although the person saying it seemed more like a madman, because before that, no one could cure syphilis. She even began to sweat from excitement in case they were going to experiment on her. The woman who had been ranting before was even more shocked by what she heard. This is clearly not what she expected from this boy. "I heard that student Pek Rini Sona is an eccentric, however. It's hard to believe. He neither sympathizes with us nor despises us. He behaves impartially, which makes it difficult to recognize his true nature." The women reasoned, trying to understand the motivation of our hero. "We forgot to introduce ourselves. My name is Mu Hua, and my younger brother Mu Wol. We are representatives of the members of the Hao clan who arrived to you," she explained, placing her hand on her brother's shoulder and looking straight into our hero's eyes. "Are you both sick?" The Chin was greatly surprised, opening his eyes wide. The guy just swallowed and tensed when he heard the question. "Yes, we got infected around the same time," he answered before his sister. "It looks like these are very difficult memories for them." "Okay, got it," our hero said, full of confidence. The four of them got out into the street. Behind there was another crowd of people. "Well then, official Juho, escort the patients to the medical ward." Our hero asked his assistant. "I lived in a brothel, but this is the first time I've seen such a child," the woman said in surprise to her brother standing next to her. "Sister, I think your jokes towards the young cockchu of the Baek-Rin infirmary have gone a little too far," her brother stated in alarm. "Ha ha, you think?" she asked with a chuckle. "Mu Hua and Mu Wol, brother and sister, born into a poor family, later sold to Hao. From childhood, they possessed outstanding beauty, for which they were highly valued in the world." "Mu Wol, maybe at least now you can tell the truth? You're healthy," she said to the person standing next to her. At one time, Mu Hua rose to the position of head of one of the departments. However, due to syphilis, she lost her influence. "You yourself know very well what happens to those with syphilis in our clan. If not me, then who will look after you?" asked my brother. "With Bega, we then, as I suggested, would both be fine now," he continued. "Do we have somewhere to run?" the sister asked with sadness in her eyes. Memories of their very old place of residence surfaced. "My parents said that our home is the Hao clan. If we are caught, they will simply return us back to them." While she was talking, they recalled pictures from childhood, how they stood and looked at their parents when they were still young. "Do you think that if we wish to leave, they would wave their hand at us and wish us all the best?" asked the sister. Meanwhile, it was already sunset outside. Birds flew in the sky, reflecting the rays of the orange sun with their wings. They left behind only a trail of fallen feathers. "The wind is so refreshing," she said, placing her hands in the wind so that it blew her clothes. But my brother understood that she was simply avoiding the conversation and did not want him to be sad because of her again. It was clear that her smile was not sincere. "Do you think that gentleman was telling the truth?" asked the brother, leaning on a tree while his sister sat next to him. "Because in fact, if this is so, then you are their last chance for a happy life. Don't put hasty hopes on him. He was playing youthfully. All that is required of us is to provide them with our bodies for inspection while we find out information," she said in a cold tone. "They absolutely do not believe that they can save her." The brother only watched his sister with bitterness in his eyes and no longer believed in a happy future. Information about changes in the Baek-Rin infirmary and about Yunam Kakchu. "We need to evaluate the skill of everyone who works here. We were told that it's okay if you can't find their weak point." He thought about the true purpose of his trip and remembered the map of the infirmary's possessions, as well as our hero and his teacher. "An assignment is an assignment. How about we fully concentrate on treatment?" the brother suggested, because for him, his sister's health is much more important than some assignment. "Ho ho! I think they just call an incurable disease incurable. Stop caring about someone like me and take care of your own desires," said the sister, turning her head in his direction. "But sister!" he immediately objected, considering her answer unacceptable. "I understand that this is impossible, but if suddenly he manages to carry out the treatment successfully, he continued to say while his sister plunged more and more into despair. It seemed she had been waiting for nothing for a long time and not hoping for anything. Her eyes were full of despair. She recalled how as a child she ran into some warehouse full of food or something similar packaged in bags, and how she took one of these bags with her, for which she naturally received punishment. She was put in a wooden cage. "I'm still so empty-headed," I know that there is nothing more stupid than dreaming about something that won't come true. I remember sitting on something like a throne, and about how she examined her hands, on which the first signs of a terrible disease appeared. The one in shock and horror that she experienced then. But now that shock that seemed to last forever is long gone. Now she is here, and she has completely resigned herself. That young man has a pleasant look, she said, looking at her brother. Yes, I noticed too. I didn't ask unnecessary questions and mind my own business. We're just patients for him, answered the brother, who also noticed the young man's politeness person. It was clear from his eyes that all his thoughts were about work, he continued to say, praising the doctor with a smile on his face. That's right. He looked at us as people. I like the warm shine in his eyes, she confirmed, remembering the young doctor. Do ordinary people always look at each other like that? She thought, remembering Chin's warm smile. But then something unexpected happened. The sister coughed loudly and grabbed her throat. Sister! The brother screamed at the top of his lungs when he saw that something was wrong. I'm babbling for some reason. My throat feels like it's about to burst, she said immediately, sweating. There was horror in the brother's eyes. You could see how much he worried about his sister. He went through all the options in his head for what would be best to do now. It will be bad if the pain gets worse. Hurry up and jump on my back, he shouted, exposing his back to his sister. Let's go back to the doctor's room, he shouted, holding his sister on his back. Be patient a little. I'll call the doctor, he shouted as he rushed through the streets like a hurricane. He probably never ran so fast in his life. I know it's selfish, but I really want to live until the end of this year, the girl thought to herself on the back of her loving brother. No one wants to die. What? I had a headache. I must have been very tired. While I was getting here, why didn't I go and rest? The official shouted at his subordinate. He pushed loudly, turned around and ran to the side. Not a character, but one big problem on his head, he thought to himself. The brother stood in front of the room in which his sick sister was. It was already deep night outside. He was tormented by the sadness of doubt whether everything would be fine or whether his closest person would survive. Meanwhile, our main character was already sitting over the body of a sick girl. Blisters and illnesses were visible all over her body. I probably have a nail rash all over my body. The pain is as if the skin is being torn, I thought to myself while examining the harmful formation on the woman's skin. In heifers, due to external factors, the disease has probably reached the 3rd stage. There is a possibility that it has spread to the nervous system, he reasoned while examining the patient. In the 3rd stage, you can make the maximum injection. However, if the disease has spread to the nervous system, then the conversation will be different, he reasoned while examining the patient's hand. It was also completely covered with a rash. Ha ha! The woman was breathing heavily. Have you calmed down a little? The rank asked. Yes, the pain has eased a little. Mr. Doctor, can I handle it? She wondered, looking at her young doctor. Even for you, treatment is probably not easy. After all, the disease is considered incurable. She continued to speak while our hero simply watched her silently. Motor ability seems to have returned to normal, so I'll give her an intramuscular injection and observe her condition. He made a decision and reached for his set of tools. Please don't give up, he declared loudly, encouraging his patient. I think everything will go well. So let's try together, he stated with complete confidence on his face. Anyone who looked at him from the outside would also perk up. He's different from other doctors who can only scratch their tongues, she thought, looking towards the doctor. Even such simple actions as hitting her in the head were incredible torment for her. Our hero was in the surgical unit. He was going through his notes and was very busy. Now the marathon will begin. First, you need to administer an injection in the center, observing the condition. Then continue monitoring, being prepared for sudden changes in the patient's condition, he reasoned, reviewing the notes. As for the information, I'm not yet sure whether the antibiotic made here will work in exactly the same way as in my past world, he reasoned. After all, he has not yet tested his new medicine on the inhabitants of this world, whose body may react to them in a completely different way. I will continue to make notes regarding the improvement of the patient's health and possible side effects, he firmly decided. But then someone suddenly knocked, disturbing his peace. I heard the results are good, said a plump woman of advanced age who came inside. Oh, you have arrived, answered our hero. If something is missing, feel free to speak, young Kakchu. The smiling woman said, bowing a little. I am indebted to the medicine division. You always help in many ways. Our hero nodded, smiling wryly. On the contrary, you are helping us. So many patients have already recovered. I think you can cure this incurable disease, she said, smiling. First, I'll still observe the patients a little more. He continued to speak, smiling and worried. Everyone in the infirmary is on the edge of their seats, and our young guy is still as strict as ever. By the way, if the medicine is ready, then I think it would be better to call it something simpler. The woman added. Why? Our hero was surprised. Not me, nor the other employees can remember this name in any way. Try to come up with one that will be a little easier to remember, Ho, she said, a little worried. And indeed, for the inhabitants of this world, the word penicillin is not similar to other words and is not easy to remember. Ha ha! I didn't realize it was like that. Our hero laughed, scratching the back of his head. And where did such a treasure come from? It's clear why the leader values you so much. Keep working. I just stopped by for a while on the way, the woman said joyfully, patting our young man on the shoulder. Have a nice productive day, our hero said, smiling and folding his hands. I'm glad there's a medicinal point nearby, he thought to himself while continuing to smile. Anyone would be glad to have a good assistant. Young, did you really make the medicine? Asked a child with thin hair sitting on a bed next to our hero. Shh! I'm measuring your pulse, our hero shouted so that the child would not distract him, but he only became more lost from this. He carefully held his hand, trying to measure the number of heartbeats per minute. The boy became infected with syphilis while he was still an embryo. Our hero reasoned. There is no way to cure a congenital disease using cheap methods. He thought sadly to himself. Every time he realized that he could not cure the disease simply because of the lack of development of this world, he was overtaken by sadness. Syphilis that arose when he was older, he could live and at the same time fight the disease. Half of his face is covered with scars, one eye no longer sees, one ear hears poorly. He thought to himself while his soul was being torn apart. Why is this world so unfair? Have you tried to study martial arts? Asked the rank of the child. No, came the short answer. Really? But your tangent has inner strength flowing through it. Our hero spoke in surprise. Inner strength? The child asked in surprise. It turns out that thanks to penicillin, not only did his well-being improve, but the energy in his body began to move. Our hero thought to himself and was very surprised. Are you breathing in some strange way? He also asked his patient. Oh, that's right. During my illness, when my temperature was rising, to reduce the pain, I breathed with my stomach like this, the kid explained, showing an example of how he breathed. Did he accumulate inner strength in this way, even without learning the method of energy management? Our hero was interested in his subordinate while the kid continued to illustrate his belly-breathing technique. If this is true, then the child is a real genius, our hero thought to himself, placing his hand on the child's shoulder. He concentrated on his feelings, trying to analyze the condition and other parameters of the baby. And then he suddenly opened his eyes in surprise. Something hit him very hard. Does he have heavenly circles inside? This is what you would expect to see in a master who took a miracle pill, but not in a child. He doesn't even know about his strength, he thought to himself. The small heavenly circle is a narrow energy circle inside the body. The large heavenly circle is a wide energy circle inside the body. The heavenly circle is one of the trainings that those who comprehend the martial arts of war undergo. It takes a lot of time to master it successfully. You said you don't have a name, right? Asked our hero. Yes, the uncles from the How clan call me Hey, answered the naive child. And also over there. The children call me Dog or Waste. He continued to list his nicknames while our hero scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Let's do this. Since I can't write you down in this way, we'll choose your real name, stated our hero, presenting the pen to paper. Yuhu, who was standing next to him, was very surprised by such a statement and became a little worried. Heh, name. The child laughed joyfully, after all. Before that, he didn't have a name. May heaven give you a child for all the misfortunes that he has experienced. Let's take the first two hieroglyphs from the expression God's mercy and get. Our hero reasoned while writing down a new name for the baby. Qian Wu. He wrote on a piece of paper. Now you're Qian Wu. Chan is in the word God, mercy. Your name means a person who is helped by heaven. Our hero explained to the shining part and showing how to spell the child's name correctly. Wow, I like it, the child shouted joyfully, shaking his fists. By the way, would you like to live in some other place than the How clan? Our hero asked. Beautiful and pleasant daylight filled the room, creating a special atmosphere. Light, snow-white fabrics hung above, and a blue staircase below attracted the eye. In the center of the room, a large blue table, covered with various objects, attracted attention. At this table there was a young guy named Lin Jaegel, with snow-white long hair, dressed in blue and white clothes. Standing next to him was a guy with red hair named Yuho, holding his hands behind his back. He told the new guy that, according to people, the reason for their visit was concern for the condition of the patient Wang Ka-gyong. But the girl was already at the stage of full recovery. The doctor had nothing to check. The long-haired blonde sighed and thought that those people were looking for a reason to find fault with at least something. Juho, looking into the guy's eyes, told him that if they refuse those people, then by doing so they will give them a reason. That's why he approved the visit to him. Lin Jaegel was currently with the doctors who were measuring her pulse. Dressed in a snow-white robe, she sat on a white sheet. Her brown hair was folded into a neat bun. In front of her stood 5 healers in long suits of white-brown and white-violet shades, topped off with white hats on their heads. The doctors knew that Juho approved the visit to Lin Jaegel. The long-haired blonde said that he felt sorry for their doctors because they would have a hard time. Yuho reported that the doctors of the Huaju infirmary